How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
Greetings, welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. I'm back in a studio. I had to push my microphone button to turn it on. Glad to have you with me, and also welcome again those of you down in Brunswick, Georgia. 98.7 FM WGIG. Delighted to have you guys back with me. I have missed my coastal Georgia family and just thrilled to have you guys with me. Now, we must begin with the news of the day, which is significant and not as much a threat as some hysterics would have you believe, frankly. The New York Times has this story, and I find it very notable how open and brazen they are. The New York Times has a story today that the left is preparing for the arrival of a Trump administration. Dun, dun, dun. And the hystericalism of it, if you will, of how they intend to proceed and operate, the resistance to a new Trump administration has already started. An emerging coalition that views Donald J. Trump's agenda as a threat to democracy is laying the groundwork to push back if he wins in November, taking extraordinary preemptive actions. I need to begin first with CNN, and it's somewhat embarrassing piece that they did with their Irish reporter, was it Donnie O'Sullivan or some such? He's a very nice guy, by the way. And essentially they went out and they're doing the fear scenarios of Donald Trump supporters say America is not a democracy, but a republic. Last I checked, the Pledge of Allegiance of the United States is to the flag and to the republic for which it stands. Now, if we're playing a semantics game here, the truth is, and there are so many self-appointed obnoxious experts out there who are convinced. Let me just give you the primer on this. So the Greeks had democracy, the Romans had republic. In essence, it's about rule by the people, but they structured it differently. The Greeks were direct in how they implemented democracy. The Romans had a republic which had democratic institutions, but also had dictators on occasion. That was the Roman Republic. We are a republic structured in the image of Rome with a Senate. That's why we have a Senate as opposed to Greek direct democracy where all the people vote all the time, which led oftentimes to chaos and oftentimes to the Greeks appointing dictators themselves. It's a battle of semantics between Greece and Rome, between the West and the East, so to speak. So we have a republic and we have democratic institutions. We are technically a constitutional republic. Anything that is not a monarchy tends to be called a republic. And we are technically a constitutional republic. So when Trump supporters say we're a republic or a constitutional republic, the inappropriate fear scenarios that CNN is doing are not only disrespectful and degrading to Trump supporters, willfully so. The lecturous tone on us being a democracy, it's not actually so in the form of a pure democracy. In fact, CNN was very dismissive in the audio of one Republican member of Congress saying we're a constitutional republic, which we technically are. We have democratic institutions. The House of Representatives was designed to be directly voted for by the people. The Senate originally was appointed by the state legislatures with the governor making an appointment and state legislatures approving. That moved to a democratic election, and frankly, I think we should go back to the states appointing the senators. The Supreme Court, of course, is life tenured and unelected. As you descend further and further into the republic down the reins of federalism, you get more and more democracy. The further up you go, you get less and less democracy. The President of the United States is elected by an electoral college. We elect the members of the electoral college who then vote for the president. We're 2 steps removed from the election of the president. For CNN to lecture us on us being a democracy is silly, it's arrogant, it's disdainful of Trump supporters, and it's no more accurate than people just saying we're a republic. It's actually a nuanced discussion. But part of that is being embraced by this resistance to the Trump administration by Democrats. A sprawling network of Democratic officials, progressive activists, watchdog groups, and ex-Republicans has been taking extraordinary steps to prepare for a potential second Trump presidency, drawn together by the fear that Mr. Trump's agenda to power would pose a grave threat not just to their agenda, but to American democracy itself. Again, this threat to democracy, I go back to David Axelrod last week, who pointed out that if you're sitting around your kitchen table discussing the threats to democracy, you live in a very privileged position in American society because most Americans are sitting around the kitchen table talking about grocery prices. If you have the time, energy, and inclination to sit around your kitchen table fretting about threats to democracy, you're probably a well-off white person, frankly. Where most people are vastly more concerned with the costs of living right now. So what these La Resistance members are doing is engaging in the best of America. Now, I know if you're a hardcore partisan, you don't want to put it that way, but they're engaging in the best of America. They're looking for legal avenues to stymie the Trump administration, which is perfectly fine, legal, and dandy. It's what conservatives are doing right now with Biden. And they're also looking at state efforts. In fact, there are states, this is so ridiculous. Washington State has stockpiled enough of the abortifacient drug mifepristone that it can survive and outlast a Trump administration. If every woman in Washington State decides they both want to get pregnant and abort it for virtue signaling, there will be enough of the pill to survive the Trump administration. That's federalism at work. There's nothing wrong with this. They're playing inside the rules. In fact, one of the funniest things I find is a passage about the American Civil Liberties Union that I just fell out laughing about. A common tactic to push back against the first Trump administration was through litigation that tied up his policies in courts. Sometimes that work succeeded in blocking actions entirely, and in other cases it delayed those policies from taking effect. The American Civil Liberties Union, one of the chief litigants against the first Trump administration, is planning to assume a similar role if he regains the White House. In anticipation of that role, the ACLU has hired a new auditing firm to do a top-to-bottom scrub of the organization's finances to ensure it can withstand scrutiny if a Trump administration were to sic the IRS on it. Now, you will notice what's left unsaid is that the Obama administration sicked the IRS on its critics, and the left likes to pretend that didn't happen, even though it actually did. Just kind of remarkable. But good for them. Good for them making sure that what they're doing is legal. Good for them making sure all their I's are dotted and T's crossed. There's nothing wrong with that. We should all embrace it and embrace the tactic. One of the things that the left has done that they're admitting in this and that we should pay attention to is a rush of regulations to ensure that those regulations were done by the spring. Why? Because there is a law, and that law says that if regulations are advanced by an administration in the outgoing months of that administration, those laws can be overturned by a simple majority vote in the next Congress. Any regulation that's enacted by the end of May of a presidential election year, Congress can't touch. It has got to go through the regulatory process or brand new legislation that can be filibustered. Any regulation that's enacted after that, the next Congress, by a simple majority vote and no filibuster, can get rid of that regulation. So the Biden administration advanced regulations rapidly. This is something that I do think Republicans need to talk about. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, was laughed at by some Senate Republicans for saying they need a reconciliation strategy. The Republicans are so in an election year mindset. Look at what the Democrats are doing. The Democrats are plotting what-if scenarios for if Donald Trump gets elected, and that included rushing regulations as quickly as possible to get them passed before the end of the spring of the election year so that Congress can't repeal them with a very simple majority vote. The Republicans in the United States Senate and House of Representatives need to start planning two things. How do you repeal the regulations? How do you use reconciliation to do it? And also, what regulations can be quickly drafted and implemented as quickly as Donald Trump becomes president? How quickly can the regulatory process work to undo the regulations of the Biden administration? The left is giving us their playbook, and instead of being angry about it, we should embrace it. They're doing everything legally. In fact, they're hiring auditors to make sure everything's on the up and up. They're embracing federalism. They're embracing lawfare, which they are legally entitled to do to fight regulations. So Republicans need to respond in kind. Okay, we know what we're up against. So how do we weaponize reconciliation like the Democrats did to undo what they did? One of the ways you do it is you tax the people whose student loans were forgiven. You also undo the Green New Deal and roll back all the money spent on electric chargers. The other thing is you win the freaking election. Stop picking clowns. Those of you in Arizona, reject Kerry Lake for a better Republican. That ensures you have an easier path forward in Arizona to win the election. Win these Senate seats. Take back the United States Senate. Pick up seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. Win the presidency. And then you can implement your regulatory agenda to roll back the Biden administration and advance your own. You can pass legislation through reconciliation that will then bind future administrations. And remember, reconciliation can't be filibustered. Play the game the Democrats are playing. Don't get mad about it. Get even. Win the election and do exactly what they're doing. Prepare for their lawfare. They're giving you signals now. And also, it's good to see the Democrats embracing states' rights. They did before the Civil War. They're now returning to their roots of embracing states' rights and saying, that the states have some level of sovereignty and the federal government can't stop us from doing things. Good. They should do that. Every state should be doing that. To the extent we can get the left and the right to disarm by recognizing the states have plenary power and Washington has limited power, the better off we're all going to be. Federalism is good. Radical federalism is great. We should be gutting Washington, D.C. if we take back power so that neither side can wage war against the other and let the states fight the states. That's what we need to do. And then pack as many conservatives in courts as possible. We have the power to do it if we play our hand right and win elections, and the data is looking very good. Ann Selzer, who's the dean of polling in the United States, she's the most respected, renowned pollster. She does an Iowa poll. She's got Donald Trump ahead by 18 points. Donald Trump won Iowa by 8 points in 2020. If Donald Trump is ahead by 18 points in Iowa, he is probably tied in Virginia, and he probably is ahead in Minnesota, and he probably will win at least Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, if not Michigan. These are warning signs for the Democrats, which is why they're beginning to prepare. Such warning signs that there's a growing muttering of Democrats that, yes, if Joe Biden has a bad debate in 11 days or whenever it is, it's going 10 days now, it's going to be time to show him the door. That's where the Democrats are out right now. They're beginning to openly fret about Joe Biden as Barack Obama has to hold him and lead him off a stage as he wanders around. And the Democrats are trying to tell us not to believe our eyes. Believe your eyes, believe what's coming, and believe, frankly, that the Democrats understand they've got a fight on their hands if Trump is president. Republicans need to do the same. You senators and Republican members of Congress need to take Mike Johnson seriously. Begin plotting reconciliation today so you can do it the moment you take back Washington without delay.
Blinds.com Cyber Monday Last Chance is happening now. Don't miss out on up to 45% off site-wide. A Blinds.com design expert can help you make the perfect selection on your schedule. We can handle everything from measure to your whole home installed for one low cost. With over 25 million windows covered, Blinds.com is the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings. Save up to 45% site-wide, plus a free professional measure right now at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, I would be delighted to have you. I'll get your phone calls after the next break. I got to play you this audio. This is from the Today Show this morning.
A mass shooting at a splash pad in Michigan, another at a Juneteenth celebration in Texas, and yet another at a gathering in Massachusetts. All just days after Friday's Supreme Court ruling that rejects a ban on bump stocks. This morning, friends and families across the country are grieving after multiple mass shootings this weekend.
Multiple victims from an active shooter. Deputies aren't on scene yet.
In Rochester Hills, Michigan, a man opened fire at a splash pad, unleashing 28 rounds. The attack left 9 injured, including children, some seriously wounded.
An 8-year-old boy who has a gunshot wound to the head.
Police say the suspect later shot himself and are investigating his motive.
It was heartbreaking, saddening, devastating. Nothing like this has ever happened around this area.
While in Round Rock, Texas, police are searching for a shooter who killed 2 and injured more than a dozen others at a Juneteenth celebration.
These folks could care less about someone's life and took someone's life and on a day we're here to celebrate community.
And at least 8 people were injured by a shooting at a pop-up party in Methuen, Massachusetts, with 2 victims in critical condition.
Here we see again gun violence that's striking at the heart of a community.
So far this year, there have been 225 mass shootings in the U.S., according to the Gun Violence Archive. The weekend shootings come just days after the Supreme Court struck down a Trump-era ban on bump stocks, the gun accessories used to modify semi-automatic weapons so that they can fire faster. But this morning, many are just searching for answers.
Comcast has made a choice to go in this direction with NBC and to make it the vanguard of the left's programming. There's no evidence at all that bump stocks were used in any of these shootings, none. And yet they decided to tie this to the Supreme Court's bump stock decision. You've heard their reporting. You heard them talk about the rounds in Michigan, all of that to imply that this was because of a Supreme Court ruling. No such thing. There is no evidence whatsoever. And yet that's their framing to try to discredit the Supreme Court. Comcast made this decision. Republicans need to remember that. You need to remember we got all these problems at the border, too. Americans for Prosperity Foundation has been taking conservatives to the border to see it for themselves. So I've wanted to go, but I couldn't go at a time with all this other family stuff going on. And the result has been they've sent me pictures, and it's really remarkable, the ecological. We talk about a mass sea of humanity, but the trash, the trampled ground, the disruption to farmland around the Rio Grande where farmers have had crops and animals and things like that. It's just remarkable. Americans for Prosperity wants to remind you with their website, SecureBorderSecureAmerica.com, that there are ways to secure the border. SecureBorderSecureAmerica.com. SecureBorderSecureAmerica.com. Go check it out from Americans for Prosperity. Be reminded there are common sense solutions to deal with the border situation from a conservative perspective. And then you can be mobilized and take action with your members of Congress. SecureBorderSecureAmerica.com. Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States of America, firmly ensconced behind my microphone at the flagship station in Atlanta. Out of the cabin, out of the woods, back to civilization. Was delighted to spend a week in Louisiana, but it was time to come home. Now, the phone number, 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, let's go to Dave. Welcome to the show, Dave. How are you?
Great, Eric. How are you?
Good.
Hey, as an election lawyer background, I hope you can allay my concern. I understand there are 227 electoral votes of states that do not require any photo ID. In a lot of states, you can register to vote with just a utility bill or some other form of identification. What is to prevent the Democrats from getting a bunch of these illegal immigrants from going to register either for early voting or even the same day of voting registration and overwhelming the system with illegal immigrant voting?
That's where Republican lawyers come in. The Republicans have to be on their A game, and they are fielding about 100,000 lawyers, they claim. I've actually been working with some outside groups on boosting the number of Republican lawyers trained to challenge these things. You can challenge a voter's participation in the election. And if you are a Republican, you have every incentive to do it. Now, here's what we know is going to happen. The Democrats, if they try to do a mass registration, they're going to try to do early vote ballot harvesting to ensure the people actually vote. So the way the Republicans have to respond is as these voter registrations come in, they try to verify if they're real people and if not, challenge them. And if they've cast an earlier absentee ballot, those don't get counted before the election, so their vote can be excluded. Now, it's actually harder to try to do this with the flood of illegal aliens on Election Day, in large part because on Election Day, oftentimes the voter registration rules are different, and oftentimes they're not going to show up. They get scared. You're going to have Republican challengers at the polls. All the Republican parties around the country get poll workers and poll watchers to show up. But this is on you guys, by the way. Not to throw this back at you, Dave, but Republicans who are really concerned about this, go learn to be a poll watcher for your local Republican Party or be a poll worker for your local county. Get involved in the system as best you can. And if you go to your local Republican Party and say, hey, I'd like to work my precinct or another precinct and be a poll watcher, they'll train you what to watch for and how to proceed as the election goes on. They'll give you points of contact and lawyers to call in the middle of the day in the process to be able to get court injunctions to litigate what's happening on the ground in real time. You have the power to make a difference. If you are concerned that the Democrats are going to steal the election, your number one job is go be a poll worker for your county. Go volunteer. They need volunteers. They need people. A bunch of left-wing college students are willing to show up to do this, but a bunch of Republicans convinced the election is going to be stolen don't have the time of the day to do it. You should. And if they say no, they got enough people, don't worry about it. Call your local Republican Party and say, I want to be a poll watcher at the election. You assign me to a local polling precinct, and I will stay there all day long and watch the conduct of the election as an observer. You're allowed to do that under the law. So if you can't get involved with your county, get involved with your local Republican Party. Go be a part of the process. It matters greatly. Hal, you're going to be the next caller. Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show. Hal, how are you?
Hey, good, Eric. We've spoken before about guns, and I really like that reply. So, yeah, I'm going to be a poll watcher, or at least apply to one. Earlier, they were talking about the mass shootings, and what people fail to understand is I did 8 years in Iraq, and at that time, Baghdad was trying to go very westernized. They were opening up pizza shops, of course, with no pork, and ice cream shops. And rarely did anybody fire at us as military contractors and military, unless it was, somebody that was trying to take a cheap shot.
Mm-hmm.
But what they did was they would pull a van up in front of this ice cream shop full of women, kids, fathers, because it was a soft target.
Right.
And it did as much damage as it could to unsettle the people and the government. And that's what's happening here is we don't have a gun problem. We have people that are taking the effect of soft targets. And I hope I didn't waste your time, but I see it happening, and everybody. No,
look, I agree with you that's what's going on here. But also, what the Today Show left out, and now I've had three different people, and I Googled quickly during commercial break to confirm, is that with the exception of the Michigan shooting, the Juneteenth shooting in Texas, the one in Massachusetts, those were both related to crimes, other crimes. Exactly. They actually weren't random mass shootings. There were actually criminal enterprises taking place in addition. The one in Michigan was a real crazy man show up mass shooting. And the media doesn't want to distract from that. So, yeah, the shooters are showing up for soft targets, but the larger issue here is that the media is willfully mischaracterizing all of these things to scare everybody, to spook everybody, to blame everybody. And that's the most unfortunate part of it, is the media is not being honest with any of it because they are steering an agenda for the left, and in particular NBC and MSNBC are most complicit in all of it. NBC and MSNBC have just decided to pick a side, and they've picked the left, and all of their programming, not just MSNBC, but NBC as well, is decisively catered towards left-wing activism, and we need to be aware of that. Now, we also need to be aware of Joe Biden and his problems. Ann Selzer has Donald Trump up 18 points in Iowa. She can be wrong. She can be wrong. But she's more often than not over the target. And if Donald Trump, who won Iowa by 8 points in 2020, is up 18 points now, then he's probably up in Wisconsin. I want to play for you some audio. This is the Biden campaign manager or campaign co-chair, Mitch Landrieu, former mayor of New Orleans. He was on CNN talking about the polling.
Going to get 21% of the black vote. Well, first of all, it's going to be a very close election. Every one of them is. Secondly, there's no universe in which Donald Trump is going to get 21% of the black vote. That's never going to happen. And so it's not that we're not worried about that, but we're fighting very, very hard for every vote.
There's no universe in which Donald Trump is going to get 21% of the black vote. This is Harry Etten, who is the CNN polling analyst.
CNN senior data reporter Harry Etten is with us. So where does the race stand among African-American voters right now?
Yeah, I keep looking for this to change, to go back to a historical norm, and it simply put has not yet. So this is the margin, or Biden and Trump among black voters, compare where we were at this point in 2020, compare where we are now. You know, at this point, look at this. In 2020, Joe Biden was getting 86% of the African-American vote. Look at where it is now. It's 70%. That's a 16-point drop, John. And more than that, it's not just that Joe Biden is losing ground, it's that Donald Trump is gaining ground. You go from 7%, single digits at this point in 2020, to now 21%. And again, John, I keep looking for signs that this is going to go back to normal, and I don't see it yet in the polling. If anything, right now we're careening towards a historic performance for a Republican presidential candidate, the likes of which we have not seen in 6 decades.
And when you dig into this number here, what is the makeup of that number?
This is where we get very interesting. So I decided to dive deeper into the crosstabs, figure out where is it that Joe Biden is truly struggling among black voters. All right, so this is black voters, Biden versus Trump margin. Look at black voters age 50 and older, and you'll see, look, Joe Biden was leading amongst this group at this point by 83 points back in 2020. Now it's 74 points. So, yeah, a slight decline in that margin, but nothing out of this world. Look at black voters under the age of 50. Holy cow, folks. Holy cow. Look at this. Joe Biden was up by 80 points among this group back at this point in 2020. Look at where that margin has careened down towards. It's now just, get this, 37 points. That lead has dropped by more than half, Mr. Berman. I just never seen anything like this. I'm like speechless, because you always look at history and you go, okay, this is a historic moment. If this polling is anywhere near correct, we are looking at a historic moment right now where black voters under the age of 50, which have historically been such a big part of the Democratic coalition, are leaving it in droves.
Yes. Y'all, in all candor and honesty here, I know the demographics of my radio show in my flagship station in Atlanta. Not a week goes by where we don't get phone calls from black men and women under the age of 50 who are done with the Democratic Party. And they're not necessarily embracing Republicans, but they're very much doing what Republican voters did in 2016, saying we need a bull in the china shop to break the system. And Donald Trump is going to break the system. And they're happy with the system being broken because they've put their trust in the Democratic Party for so long, and the Democratic Party isn't working for them anymore. They're okay with Donald Trump being the bull in the china shop. They're okay with Donald Trump smashing things. We hear this all the time. We get these calls here all the time from black voters who are furious with Joe Biden. They don't particularly care for the GOP. In Georgia, for example, they like Brian Kemp. They like his steady hand. But nationally, it's not even so much that they really are for Donald Trump so much as he's going to smash up a system that doesn't work for them, and they're okay with that because the system as it is right now isn't working for them. And that's something the Democrats don't understand. It's something the establishment Republican didn't understand in 2016. It's something a lot of non-Trump voters in 2016 didn't understand about Republicans who were just that furious with the Republican Party's repeated betrayals, promises made and promises broken. Now you have the same thing, and increasingly, what do you also have? You have a bunch of wealthy, college-educated white people moving into the Democratic Party. And in bringing their values into the Democratic Party, they're clashing with the values of the old guard, non-white, working-class black voters. Do you know who is most opposed to transgenderism in America? It's not upper-income white people. It's black and Hispanic voters. Do you know who the most socially conservative voters in America are? Black and Hispanic voters. They may not be authentic conservatives. They may be for abortion rights. They may be okay with gay marriage. But culturally, they're fairly conservative in their views of family, and their views of government, and their views of government dependence, and their views of economics. They're fairly conservative. And they want a government that works for them, and they don't view Joe Biden's government as working for them. And they're turning on him. And as a bunch of white wokes move into the Democratic Party, it's alienating the black and Hispanic voters in urban and exurban areas and suburban areas who they don't want to buy the electric car. They don't want to get rid of the gas stove. They don't want to go with the Green New Deal. They don't like those things. They're punitive costs to their families. They reject them. And the awfuls have taken over the Democratic Party, the affluent, white, female urban liberals. And as the awfuls, the affluent female white urban liberals take over the Democratic Party, black women, black men, Hispanic men, they're leaving. Nobody wants to be in the party with the awfuls. And they're headed to Donald Trump, who at least is fun and makes them laugh and says absurd things for the laugh. And they remember his economy, and his economy worked for them in a way Joe Biden's is not. So if you like what you're getting from Joe Biden's economy, you stay with him. And if you don't, well, you remember the economy wasn't so bad when Donald Trump was president. We should go back to that. One of the other things you have with the awfuls now is they're taking over companies like banks, and they're forcing banks to cancel accounts with supposedly problematic people. This is one of the reasons Old Glory has taken off. Old Glory Bank is my bank. I went to them because as a conservative radio show host, it's only a matter of time before another bank starts giving me trouble just by virtue of being. And I didn't want that. And I also liked just how, even though they're online, they figured out a way for me to make offline transactions happen, like, for example, taking cash and depositing it, because I had an online bank, and I actually really liked them, but I couldn't deposit cash at that bank. With Old Glory Bank, I can, and I've done it now several times, and it just works flawlessly with their inventive app. Old Glory Bank can be your bank. It can be your kid's bank, too. If you got kids, they do babysitting jobs, odd jobs around the house, whatever you need. You can go to Old Glory Bank, deposit cash into Old Glory Bank through 88,000 retail locations. So your kid's babysitting job, their lawn job, whatever, they get paid cash, they can still deposit it. And you get competitive interest rates with savings accounts, no fee checking. OldGloryBank.com. OldGloryBank.com. You can get an account less than 8 minutes. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. This hour of the program is brought to you by First Liberty Building and Loan. Wherever you are nationwide, if you're buying a building, buying a franchise, and your business wants to grow, First Liberty might be able to help you. They make their own lending decisions. Reach out to them. Tell them I sent you. Go to firstlibertyga.com. You can get all of their contact information. Firstlibertyga.com. Just spend 10 minutes with them. Now, I need to go on record and talk to you about something. It's important. I need to explain to you how tariffs work, and the reason I need to explain to you how tariffs work is because Bloomberg has this. If elected again, Donald Trump has pledged to enact a 10% across-the-board tariff on imports that he says will raise billions of dollars in revenue to pay for more tax cuts. But mainstream economists say such a plan, plus a 60% levy on Chinese imports, would amount to a tax increase on American households. Not true, says the Republican National Committee. According to reporting Monday from Bloomberg's Nancy Cook in Washington, RNC spokesperson Anna Kelly said, quote, "The notion that tariffs are a tax on U.S. consumers is a lie pushed by outsourcers and the Chinese Communist Party." May God have mercy on your soul if you believe that nonsense. Republicans long ago rejected tariffs for this reason. Who pays the tariff? Let's say we put 100% tariff on Chinese T-shirts. The Chinese $5 T-shirt becomes $10. Who pays? China does not pay. No, you pay. What happens is the tariff is applied when the good gets to the American port, not when it leaves China. So the company that takes the $5 T-shirt, that American company that has imported the T-shirt has to add the additional $5 to the price. So you, the consumer, pay the tariff. Anyone who says China is paying the tariff is stupid and should not be believed. Anyone who says that tariffs are not a tax on consumers and that to say so is a lie of the Chinese Communist Party is stupid and should not be believed. A tariff is a tax. You pay the tax by the increase in the good. By the way, it's also inflationary. It drives up the cost of goods. So essentially, what it does is it's trying to incentivize companies to buy from somewhere not affected by the tariff as opposed to passing it on to the consumer. But oftentimes, companies choose to pass on the price to the consumer. That's the reality. That's the tariff. An increase in tariffs is a tax on the American public, and anyone telling you otherwise cannot be believed and probably doesn't know what male and female are either. It's that mendacious of a lie.